Welcome to this session on application-specific permissions. In this session, we'll see how we can assign users application-specific permissions, and then we'll also take a look at teams. We'll discuss how we can create a team, add users to a team, add applications to a team, which will then imply the different permissions that those users in the teams have. So let's go ahead and get started. Application-specific permissions allow us to grant permissions or a role to a user for a specific application or multiple applications. So here we can see Mary Jane, who by default is a developer, but by clicking Grant Role in Applications, we can select an application like the Dialogues plugin and grant Mary Jane an application-specific developer role, which may have different sets of access control. So this allows us to grant Mary Jane access in a different role type fashion to each one of the applications if that's necessary. Now we also can use application-specific permissions to override the default user's infrastructure role permission. So Mary Jane is a developer, and here the app-specific developer may have different permissions than she does as a default developer. The default user's role can be overridden to either increase or decrease the level of access. So just because the default level has a certain level of access, it doesn't mean that application specifics can only make that greater or only make it less. It could be either one. But if we do use the no access level of permissions in the default user role, the result will be that that user will not be able to log in. So there's no way to override that once the user's default role says no access. So here's an example. We see Mary Jane again. The default role is developer, and the developer can reuse and monitor inside of development. But for the Dialogues plugin, Mary Jane was given application-specific developer, and that has change and deploy, which is actually a higher level of application access. So here we're overriding her default role in the development environment only. In QA and in production, we see that both roles, both the default and the application specific, have the same set of permissions. So this new definition of the Dialogues plugin application-specific role only applies to the development environment. Now, if we look at teams, teams can help us simplify permission management because we can create groups of IT users and then work with several applications with those teams at the same time. So a team can be assigned one or more applications, and the team can have one or more IT users. The users on the team can belong to multiple teams, so they're not restricted to a single team, and users will have roles in the team, and they can have different roles in each team that they're in. Users in the same team can have different roles for the same application. But one thing we have to remember is that each application can only be assigned to a single team. So let's look at this in a little more detail. To create a team, we can go to the user management area of Lifetime, and in that area we can manage users, teams, and roles. By selecting teams, we can create a new team. And creating a new team is as simple as giving it a name and a description and clicking Create. Once we have our team, then we can edit that team or add users to the team. Multiple users can be selected for the team with a specific role, and each team member could have a different role within the team if that was needed. Users can be added to multiple teams. So here we can see that our to-do team is going to have users added to it. And in this case, John Smith and Mary Jane have been selected, and they've been selected with the role of application-specific developer. Now when we add applications to the team, so once our team is defined and we have John Smith and Mary on the team, then we wish to add applications to the team as well. Multiple applications can be added to the team, and the IT users in the team will have their team role permissions for all the applications that are associated with it. So once they're given a particular role in the team, it applies to all of the apps. The same application cannot be added to two different teams, as we mentioned before. So here we see our to-do team, which had John and Mary Jane on the team, and we're now adding applications to it. Since this is the to-do team, we will add the to-do core app and the to-do app itself. So we have two mobile apps, one which is the core and one which is the actual application. Both of those apps are now added to the team. So in this case, to be able to see the team, the users, their roles, and the apps all in the same place, the team definition would look like this. Here are the users, where we see John Smith and Mary Jane, and here are the applications, which are the to-do and the to-do core. If we came in and changed Mary Jane's role to tester instead of app-specific developer, then this will actually change her access to these applications, because she's no longer being considered a developer, she's being considered a tester. So whatever this role's application access levels are, that's what Mary Jane is going to get for these specific applications. So let's look at Mary Jane in a little more detail, but just remember the following. Users can have application-specific and team and infrastructure level permissions. The team permissions will always override the infrastructure level permissions, and any application-specific permissions override the team and the infrastructure. So application-specific permissions are the most powerful and the ones that will always override any of the others. So if we go back and look at how we've been defining Mary Jane throughout this session, we gave Mary Jane access to the Dialogues plugin as an application-specific developer. She's also been added to the Orders team application, and she's an application-specific developer there. So by default, Mary Jane is a developer, but as a developer, she can only reuse and monitor. So she can see the different components and applications, but she can't actually do anything to them. Once she's been assigned to the Dialogues plugin, and she's part of the Orders application team, she then has the ability to change that code and deploy it inside of development. The to-do team changed Mary Jane's role to tester. So here you can see she now has no access in development because she's just a tester and she shouldn't be messing with the code, while in quality she's allowed to reuse and monitor, which is higher than her normal list level of permissions. So if we go back to the left here, we can see that by doing application-specific stuff, we increased her permissions. When she was added to the Orders team as an app-specific developer, she had her permissions increased. And when she was added to the to-do team, her permissions decreased in development, but increased in QA because she's a tester, which makes perfect sense. So we can see that Mary Jane can belong to different teams, Mary Jane can have access to different applications, and can have a fairly complicated set of requirements as far as access to all those applications in these different environments, and Lifetime can help us set that up relatively easily. And again, when any of these don't exist, everything falls back to the default role that exists. These will always just modify whatever is in the default role, and sometimes it decreases the level of access and sometimes it increases the level of access. So hopefully this has made application-specific permissions make a little bit more sense. Thanks for watching and have a great day.